background. I'm a journalist and a book editor. Most of my work is sort of sitting behind a computer, consulting books and so forth. And the idea of somebody had said to me a few years ago that I'd be spending one Saturday night a month going out and talking to drunks in the street of Richmond. I would have said they were clean out of their minds. But the way I got involved in street passes was through my friendship with Andrew and Heidi Satterley. Heidi is here today. Andrew is the sort of person who helped set up street pastors here in Melbourne. I've known them for a number of years. They're very, very good friends of mine. And Andrew, I'd first known the Satterleys when they first came out to Australia about a decade ago. They came out here for a year, then they went back to England, then they came back a few years ago. And in that time that they were in England, Andrew had become involved with street pastors, which was very, very big in the United Kingdom, as you can see. And he was very, very excited about it. He had all sorts of stories about things he'd personally experienced and witnessed in the streets of Plymouth in the southwest of England, where they lived. And he seemed to be particularly keen that I should get involved in it. And I sort of hesitated a bit, and he sort of looked at me and said, "No, John, you can do it." And because of Andrew, because of the sort of person he is, and because of the stories he told about street pastors, I thought, look, I'll give this thing a go. And wonderful thing about street pastors, and I think the other speakers have conveyed this very well, is the professionalism of it. I don't mean that it's a profession without any heart at all, because it does start from, I think, from a godly perspective, but there's wonderful backup. People who qualify as street pastors, first of all, undergo a certain number of hours of training in first aid, conflict resolution, counselling, drug and alcohol awareness and so forth. Really, really useful things. I mean, those things really equip a Christian in so many wonderful ways for street pastors and beyond street pastors. The police value what we do, and it has been, according to what I've heard, that is actually the presence of street pastors in the suburb of Richmond has actually changed the culture of that area. It's funny, we just sort of do these sort of seemingly small, inconsequential things away from the limelight, and yet it does actually have a cumulative effect. We get to know the people, the security people outside the hotels and clubs. We become, our presence there becomes familiar, and we hope as time goes by that people will know more about us. The way we go out on patrols, we have a particular formation so that we keep within sight of each other. There's a certain minimum number of street pastors who you can't have sort of fewer than a certain number, so that when we go out we have backup. We keep an eye on each other, and we can come to each other's aid. And of course the most important thing, of course, is the prayer support. Our greatest resources are the spiritual resources of God and His kingdom, and the prayer partners back at base in the church hall play an absolutely indispensable part of this particular ministry. We'll sort of phone back or contact them about particular situations that we can see emerging. And as we go in to do something practical, there's somebody back at base praying about that situation. And that's a very exciting thing. And it's an enriching experience to be a street pastor. I mean, certainly in my case, I had to undergo quite a lot of change. I had to allow God to change my perspective. I relate very much to what Pamela said about having a hierarchy of people out there who had various needs, and perhaps people who get themselves into situations through overindulging in drink or drugs. They wouldn't necessarily have been the first people to stake a claim on my concerns. But when you are in those situations, suddenly something changes inside you, and that's very beneficial. The encounters we have, sometimes they're very ordinary things. Sometimes we have nights out on the streets which are really quite uneventful. We sort of we remove bottles, broken glass from the streets. We help, we just talk to the door security people. But sometimes you have one-on-one encounters which make you realise how important street pastors can be. I remember there was, I can think of a number of encounters. There's one particularly memorable one from sometime last year when there was I was making my way back to the church hall where we're sort of based in Richmond, and a couple of the other street pastors fallen into conversation with a young man. In fact, the young man was very, very drunk. He was sort of sitting on the curbside, his feet in the gutter. He had his chin down on his chest. He was very upset, and what it turned out is he had had a recent break-up with his girlfriend, and he had tried that evening to drown his sorrows, and I mean really drown his sorrows. He was very drunk. We tried to hail taxis, but taxi cabs took one look at him, and they moved on. So we had to sort of stop for quite some time to help him, and two particular street pastors were sitting on the curbside with him, one on either side of him. And after about, I think it must have been about at least 3/4 of an hour, eventually we managed to sober him up a bit, and we managed to hail a taxi cab. During that time, he had sort of poured out his heart about all the problems of his life, and street pastors had provided a sympathetic ear to him. And just before he got into the taxi cab, I'll never forget his reaction. He said, "Oh, look, thank you so much, you guys." He gave each of us a hug, and he said, and then he got out his mobile phone, took a photo. He said, "Could you put your street pastors' hats on so he could take a photograph of us?" And it's that was a very memorable sort of thing. One of the most interesting responses we get, and Pamela's actually described this, is when some people ask you, when you've helped them, and they ask you, "How much do you get paid to do this?" And you reply, "Well, we don't get paid at all." And that certainly, that sort of stops them in their tracks. I'm not wanting to make this sound as though we're sort of super saints or whatever. The important thing is that this is one of the most effective ways of conveying the gospel to them, that they matter to God. And I'm not saying that we necessarily convert them into regular church-going Christians on the spot there, but we've planted the seeds of something about the nature of God's love and the people who are part of God's kingdom, that we like to grow into the sort of people who have a heart for the least, the last, and the lost, and we hope that they'll take that memory away with them. Sometimes in life, I know that with my own life, some things that people said years and years ago. I remember a wonderful Scottish Sunday school teacher I had when I was growing up in England. There are particular things she said, sometimes quite small things, but they're things which have remained with me for the rest of my life. And street pastors and what we do and how we treat people, I believe, is a very, very important part of reaching out to people and connecting them up with God's kingdom and showing them that God really loves them. Thank you very much.